What's up guys, it's Amir, and in this video we're going to discuss how to spot early signs of hair loss. So that way if you catch this stuff early, you can prevent it, take all the actions necessary so you don't end up going bald in the future or have to worry about investing in an expensive hair transplant.
A quick word from our sponsor, Vera Clinic.
I'd like to think the sponsor of today's video is Vera Clinic. Vera Clinic is where I got my hair transplant done from. If you're looking for a quality, trusted professionals who can get you long-lasting and natural-looking results for a fraction of a price, look no further than Vera Clinic. They got me these amazing results from my own hair transplant, and I would highly recommend them to anybody looking to get their own transplant done, especially overseas. If you want to check out my series of my hair transplant, where I filmed the whole surgery and everything, as well as my month-by-month recovery, I'll leave a link to that whole playlist in the description below, as well as the contact information for Vera Clinic so you can contact them for your own hair transplant needs. That being said, let's jump right into the video. First things first, if you think that you are going bald or that you have bald relatives, that's usually a good place to start, because chances are if your dad, your uncle, your brother, or somewhere in your genetics you have people who have been balding, especially at an earlier age, chances are you will most likely get it. The funny thing is, for me, I don't have anybody who is balding, or I know anybody in my family. My dad has a full head of hair, my uncles, my grandpa, all of them had a full head of hair, but somewhere down the line some guy had a balding head, which is the genetics I got down my family. Sometimes it may not be directly from those who are the most closest to you. It might be some random relative down in your family tree somewhere who you unfortunately share the genes with, and as a result of that, it could affect you. It's important to look down those immediate connections and look down the family line, because if that one person had it, chances are you might be prone to it. And later in the video I'll show you some of the early signs you can visibly look out for to see if you're susceptible to further hair loss. Another thing is, if you think that you've been losing a lot of hair lately, there are a couple of places to check where your hair grows through quite a bit of friction. One of them is where you sleep, aka your pillowcase. When you wake up in the morning, especially if you get a white pillowcase that can contrast your hair, that's usually a great place to start, because at nighttime your head is moving quite a bit, so there is a good amount of friction being caused on your scalp. And if you see quite a bit of hair fall on the pillowcase, that could possibly mean that you are starting to lose hair. Generally, causing that much friction on your head is not a good idea to begin with, and if you have a hair loss problem, I would highly recommend sleeping on a silk pillowcase, because it's a lot more gentle on your head and it's not going to cause as much friction and damage your hair. Another great place to check is in the shower. When you are washing your head, and especially when you are shampooing, make sure that after you shampoo and you're done showering, you take a look at how much hair is in your hands. If you have a few strands here and there, that's completely fine, but if you are constantly, every time you're washing your hair, you see clumps of hair coming out, that is also a big red flag and something to watch out for. I'm not saying you should completely go shampoo free, although that's been a trend lately. I don't know the efficacy of any of those things, but again, another point of friction where you can easily see if you're going to be going bald or not. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the average person loses about 80 to 100 hairs per day, so some hair fall is completely fine, because that's part of anybody's natural process. We're talking in excess, right? If we see excessive hair fall in those areas of friction, then we definitely have a cause for concern. Also, you can check in the mirror with a bright light. If you go to your mirror and you have a second mirror, you can easily point that up, kind of like how the barbers do it, and you can easily see, like, especially the crown area, the mid scalp, all the areas that you can't see directly except for like your hairline. It's a good idea to check those areas routinely to ensure that, you know, those areas are not thinning out, especially if you've been experiencing hair fall lately. Speaking of crown and areas that you can't see, let's talk about areas where hair loss will most commonly start. Typically, the way that hair loss is measured is on a Norwood scale. So if you are a Norwood 0, that means you have absolutely no hair loss, and this scale goes up to a 7. So if you are a Norwood 7, that means your top half is completely gone, and anything in between will, you know, relatively measure where you're at on your hair loss. A lot of people, when they start off, they're at a Norwood 1, 2, maybe even 3, which is the time that they end up getting concerned, like, oh, I'm really losing hair. But honestly, if you can catch it at Norwood 1, ideally, that's the optimal point where you can reverse it without getting a hair transplant or investing in any of these crazy treatments. One of the most immediate places that you can check, that you can visibly see every single day, is your hairline. Keep a note of, you know, where your hairline is in comparison to how it was a couple years back. Now, if we look at ourselves in the mirror every single day, we don't notice much change, but if you look at your old photos and see where your hairline was compared to where it is now, it can give you a good indication on if you've been receding your hairline. Some people, they'll see their hairline going immediately back, but for others, for someone like me, I started seeing a lot of hair loss earlier in my temple. So my hairline was going back, kind of making this like a V, and I still had a good amount of hair like in the frontal area. But the funny thing is I didn't really even notice that. The first thing I noticed was the crown area over here, which is another big spot that people usually miss until it's a little too late. Typically for a situation like mine, the way that normal scale would progress is it will start obviously with the crown, and then slowly it will start shrinking just like this until I would lose pretty much the top half of my head. For some people, it would progress differently, where if they only start receding their hairline, it will slowly start receding until basically it goes all the way back. Everyone loses the hair at a different pace and in a different style or pattern, but regardless, just because you think that you are only noticing hair in one area, don't think that it can't catch up in another area of your scalp. And that's why taking proactive action is absolutely necessary to ensure that that stuff doesn't progress any further. Now, a third type of hair loss to keep in mind is called diffuse thinning. Diffuse thinning doesn't happen in any particular order of the hairline or crown. The hairs on your scalp will just start to slowly thin out, meaning that especially if you have like bright light on it, you are going to be able to easily see right through your scalp. So you'll still have a hairline, you'll still have a decent amount of hair on your crown, but all the hair on it is just going to feel extremely thin. A lot of people will use hair fibers to combat something like this, but generally speaking, if you have very fine hair even on the side areas where you're not balding, that's typically a sign that you're going to have diffuse thinning. And in some cases, those people are not even the best candidates for a hair transplant because their grafts are going to be so thin. Even when they're retransplanted up over here, they're not going to do as well, obviously. But for that kind of situation, you can't just think of hair transplant as the first solution. You have to take some prerequisites for some amount of time before you're eligible for the transplant. After watching this video, you're going to see your symptoms, you're going to know where you stand on this Norwood scale. Let's talk about some action plans, right? What can you do about this to ensure that it's not going to progress further or it's going to get worse down the line? First things first, I would say consult a doctor to ensure that what you're facing is androgenic alopecia, which is the genetic hair loss that most guys are going to face. Sometimes you may be losing hair, but it may be due to other reasons. You might be nutritionally deficient, you might have stress, anxiety, a lot of various reasons. So make sure that the hair loss you're facing is the genetic type, and then you can take the most probable step necessary after you confirm this with your doctor. And that is establishing a DHT prevention protocol. DHT is the hormone that causes hair loss, and that is going to be the root of your problem. So before you worry about regrowing hair, you have to get to the root of the problem, which is causing the hair loss. While you're at the doctor and assuming they diagnose you for androgenic alopecia, I would ask the doctor to see if I am a good fit for finasteride. Finasteride is a DHT blocker, but a lot of people are scared to take it because of its side effects like ED, low libido, depression, anxiety, a variety of scary side effects, which in my opinion, I think are very overhyped. It's very unlikely that you'll get the side effects. And again, assuming you're consulting with your doctor, that can really mitigate that risk. And you don't even have to take a 1 milligram, which is the standard dose that they give. There's been studies that came out, even taking 0.1 to 0.3 milligrams of finasteride is still sufficient enough to prevent the hair loss while reducing any of the side effects. If the side effects is something that concerns you, you can get something like this. This is like a pill cutter I got off Amazon. There's like a blade over here. You can chop up the finasteride in like these tiny pieces instead of having to take a full pill. And that's going to be very efficient in terms of having to crush the pill and like guess the dosage, right? So this lets you break it up into 0.1 to 0.3 milligrams, and as a result, help you block that DHT. Now, if you're completely opposed to taking any sort of drugs, you can even take natural DHT blockers. Saw palmetto, pumpkin seed oils, turmeric, green tea, coconut oil. All of these are great natural DHT blockers, which you can also incorporate on their own or with finasteride if you want to go completely balls to the walls in terms of prevention. That's the first thing that I would do. The second step is recovery. Recovery is what we would ideally like, especially if you're far gone and you want to recover the hair that you have. Obviously, the first thing I would always recommend is minoxidil. Minoxidil is a vasodilator, meaning that if you put it on any area, especially the scalp, it's going to start stimulating blood circulation in that area, and having that blood circulation is what's going to help regrow that hair. Whether your hairline has receded, you are diffusely thinning, or you have thinning all over the scalp, using minoxidil is going to help regrow hair in that area. But from someone who's taken minoxidil for the past 7 years, one regret that I have is that I didn't use it to its fullest potential. The way you can use it to its fullest potential is by combining it with a derma roller. Especially if you have a receding hairline, a derma roller works very well. It's going to really help you reverse your hair loss. Use the derma roller once a week and use the minoxidil 6 days out of the week. Essentially, when you use the derma roller, or you can even get the electron derma pen, which is what I have, it's a lot faster. What you're doing is you're creating these tiny micro punctures on your scalp, and it creates like these small wounds. It doesn't really hurt, but when those wounds start to heal, it promotes growth factors such as collagen, protein, and most importantly, it's opening up these tiny holes in your scalp that's able to absorb the minoxidil a lot better. Is that studies show that when you're using minoxidil alone, it's up to 30 to 40% effective because it's not as well absorbed by the scalp. But when you use the derma roller once a week, you're opening up those channels, those wounds, and that really helps absorb the minoxidil better, making it up to 95% effective than using just this stuff alone. So you're literally 3 to 4xing your hair growth just by adding that one small routine into your hair growth regimen once a week, and you are literally getting 3 to 4 times the results. And shameless plug, if you get the one that's by Growplex, that is my own minoxidil brand, it comes with a derma roller and it also has natural DHT blockers embedded in there, so that's gonna help you do both, which is regrow hair and also block some of that DHT naturally, whether you take finasteride or not. Regardless, if you are losing hair, this is the go-to protocol, I would say. Number 1, prevention. Number 2, regrowth. And number 3, routine. As long as you're consistent with all of these things, you're gonna have no issues in terms of stopping, recovering, and reversing the hair loss. And obviously, whether you get a hair transplant or not, whether it's Turkey or the States, having these treatments under your belt is gonna help you prevent any further hair loss and even gain more hair density after your transplant. Regardless, in this video, I hope you got a good idea on how to spot your hair loss and what to do if you see hair loss. I wish back in 2016 when I started losing hair, I had a video like this that walked me through step by step. It was more like, for me when I was losing hair, it was just a guessing game, like, oh, maybe this might work, maybe this might work, right? But regardless, I hope you found value in this video. And if you liked it, let me know by giving it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.